notacon. I'm going to take some time this afternoon to talk about high availability using Linux. And it's going to be a pretty broad presentation. It's not going to be sort of something that you can sort of use as a how-to, but certainly something that you can build on if you want to do something insane with Linux in terms of, making routers, making high availability services like email, web services, all that kind of good stuff. So that is me, David, my email address, and my website. And then there's a IRC channel that a lot of us hang out on the oftc.net. I don't even remember what OFTC stands for. We hate openprojects.net, I don't know. But the Ohio Linux channel is where a lot of people hang out. So in general, a lot of people from this area will hang out on that IRC channel. And I know that some people here do already. Others may think about it. So that's usually a good place to get some information if you're working, even if it's completely unrelated to Linux. It's a good resource for tech people in the Northeast Ohio area. You do get people from Columbus on there and all that kind of stuff. So it's kind of an interesting group. Okay, who the hell am I? Okay, I guess I'm lots of things. I guess my primary goal in life is, I'm a network guy pretty much. I work with a lot of Cisco gear, Linux, all that kind of stuff. I maintain Unix boxes. I've been doing this for basically forever. I'm also a writer for a couple of different magazines. Probably one of the most well-known is Linux Format. That costs like $15 over here or something retarded like that. So it's, you can buy it at Micro Center. It's a really, really good magazine, if I don't say so myself. But there's that. I also run the Linux Users Group of Cleveland here downtown, and pretty good group of people. We have meetings every second Saturday of the month at Greg's office at Internet in the Superior Building. And we usually get maybe a dozen, 18 people turn up, and we just talk about, usually have some subject that we talk about, and then after the first hour it drifts off into whatever else Larry's got going on in the world. So I should say that Larry is a guy that works for Progressive who bought one of those $500 laptops from Walmart, and every time he comes he has a different issue with it. I can't get my wireless to work. I can't get my mouse to work. I think he's got everything working on it now after like 6 months. I also contribute to a selection of open source projects. So I like to give back as well as take, and believe me, I have taken plenty over the years. So I don't really contribute much to NetFilter right now, but I did a couple of years ago. Still pretty involved in user mode Linux. If anybody here is involved in any lugs, I did a selection of UML presentations about 18 months ago around various places. And I've also contributed some code to the Linux kernel, specifically with relation to networking stuff. So pretty broad knowledge and all that kind of stuff. You're probably asking, okay, you're here, why should I care what you say? Basically, I've used Ethernet and IP for probably 12, 15 years. I've used it in production for 8 years, and everything I talk about today, I've got running in a data center. So it's not just stuff that's on paper, it's stuff that generates heat and buzzes. So it's actually real world things. Probably one of the bigger accomplishments I've done that actually relates to this particular topic is there's a couple of those little websites like Slashdot.linux.com. You get maybe like 5 million hits a day. They used to run on Cisco equipment. We got all that Cisco equipment and said, this is crap, threw it away, put in 2 Linux boxes. It works great. I also took a note that FARC, if anybody here read FARC? Anybody here noticed that FARC is broken like every other day for the last month? So I'm going to print this presentation out and give it to Drew and say, read this. I don't know what they're thinking. Let me just, so I can actually see this. 1 second. There we go. No. Okay. Now, before we get started, we should probably discuss what is high availability. Basically, what it is the ability to continue to provide network services when something breaks. And it can be something breaks on purpose or something breaks just because it wants to. And high availability is always sort of a mixture of the planned maintenance and planned network changes that are done on a network, as well as unplanned outages due to software problems, hardware problems, misconfigurations, all that kind of stuff. So high availability in general is a way to continue whatever service you provide on your network, even when something doesn't work. Most common thing to do with high availability is the fact that we have to have a lot of the same thing. No longer you can't go out and buy 1 switch, you have to go buy 2 or 3. You can't buy 1 router, you have to go buy 2 or 3. So in terms of the actual cost of implementing HA, it's a little bit more expensive than initially than going with a simple flat network. The upside is that you'll still have customers when one of them breaks. So I always like to have a few extra spares there, and it comes in pretty handy. Another great advantage of HA is that you can go and do network changes during the day. You can take out routers to do upgrades. You can do all sorts of stuff like that, and it won't really impact much. Now, obviously, you don't want to do that day in, day out, because there is some interruption during the migration. But if you really need to upgrade something, or you really need to take something out because it's broken, then you can usually do that without causing too many problems. Another great opportunity with HA is that when something breaks, you don't have to jump on it straight away. So when the router goes down or a switch blows up, unless it's actually on fire and threatening something else, then you can just stay asleep. And then you come in the morning and fix it. Now, the goal of any network is to be up all the time, or at least up as often as it needs to be. Telco world has the 5 nines expectation, which is 99.999% of uptime, which I think works out at about 5 minutes of downtime a year. Now, anybody here who works on Cisco equipment knows that you're probably not going to get even 1 reboot in 5 minutes. Linux boxes, maybe you get 2. So if you want to get 5 nines of uptime, you've got to have another way of getting your traffic through other than just one thing. Obviously now, as things become more complex, and especially in terms of routers and switches, the whole what is a router, what is a switch, is kind of blended together. It takes much longer for something to come up once it goes down. So working around just a simple reboot is important. And obviously, once you have an unplanned outage, doesn't matter what your network is and what you're doing, without any high availability, 5 minutes, you're going to hit 5 minutes pretty quick. You're probably going to hit 5 minutes before it gets to somebody's pager. So if you really want 5 nines, then you have to use some other tools. The other great thing with HA is that it's much simpler to administrate outages. You don't operate in crisis mode. You're not chasing something. You go in and you resolve an individual issue rather than dealing with a problem and dealing with customers, your boss, whatever else at the same time. So you resolve an issue a lot more logically, and you don't always have to fight whatever's coming down from above telling you, why is this down, why is this not working, when you can fix it later. Obviously important to understand what HA is not. It isn't traffic distribution, load balancing. It isn't going to put web traffic on 2 different boxes. You can do that with it, but HA itself is not going to do that. It's not a alternative to actually setting stuff up right either. If you have HA, chances are your network configuration is going to be probably 10 times more complicated than with a flat structure. Certainly when you get into looking at IP and doing stuff like BGP, OSPF, complex routing, once you screw that up and you're pretty much done for. So while HA does give you lower administrative overhead in an outage, it increases your overhead in terms of setting stuff up properly. And with a HA network, there are some things that you have to think about in terms of, if I make a change here, how will it have a domino effect down the entire network? So you really need to have a good understanding of what you're doing. Otherwise, it's just going to come and slap you in the face later. And as always, you can have as many switches, routers, whatever you like. But if you've got SVC coming in through the wall, you're still kind of screwed. If you have one utility company for power and you don't have a generator, you're probably screwed as well. If you don't have redundant AC, especially this time of year, now it's starting to get warmer, computers like cold. So it's kind of important to have that. Now, we're talking about Linux here, but almost every single operating system has some HA capabilities, whether it's I shouldn't say operating system platform, is probably more appropriate. If it's OpenBSD, NetBSD, FreeBSD, Linux, Windows has some kind of HA capability, Cisco stuff, Foundry, all that kind of thing. Reason for using Linux? Because it just works. Linux is pretty much rock solid. You get a system where lots of people have played with it, lots of people have tested it. It's not a system where you have a preset configuration that you have to abide by in order to make it work. You can pretty much do whatever you want with it. Linux also is pretty adaptive in terms of what it can do. You can have one Linux box that is a switch, a router, a load balancer, a load balanced node, a DNS server, a mail server, a web server, an FTP server. Have it handle your voice over IP and some other stuff all at once. Now, that's probably the worst thing you could possibly do, but in terms of HA, sometimes having more than one service on a single box can be pretty useful, and if you have to migrate services from a separate system. So Linux is pretty flexible that way. It's 2005 now. Linux is supported by a lot of companies, IBM, Novell, HP, all that kind of stuff. They all support Linux. So if you want to roll this out commercially, or roll it out within a corporation where something that's free doesn't have a whole lot of weight, $1 billion from Linux goes along. $1 billion from IBM for Linux goes a long way. I also noticed some banner ads on Slashdot over the last couple of weeks saying that Linux is more expensive than Microsoft. I think that's my explanation anyway. I assume they're including the cost of training an getting a monkey, training it for the MCSE, and then teaching it how to use Linux. So I don't know, but in any case, Linux is cheap. You can get a CD. You don't really have any licensing costs. You just have the cost of the hardware, and if you have some hardware laying around that you can play with, then you're all set. I assume anybody who's used a computer for more than a week has some idea what the heck this is. This is the OSI model used for networking. It just shows a couple of different layers. I put it in here just because it looks ugly, so it seems to obviously have some bearing on things. Now, what we're going to look at today in terms of HA are these particular layers. I'm going to start with Ethernet, which everybody knows and loves. Obviously, Ethernet, while I did say switches and network cards, wireless 802, 802.11b, A, G, I, N, whatever they have now, that's all Ethernet. Now, doing redundant wireless is a little more complicated, and I didn't touch on it here, but it's certainly something